Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel Sparkle English, where I help you improve your English level. Today we're going to talk about 4 different semicolon rules. So there are 4 ways that we can use the semicolon, and this here is the semicolon. The first 2 uses are the most common use of the semicolon, and then I'll teach you 2 other uses that are not as common, but are still options of how you can use this punctuation mark. So let's begin with the first use. So we use a semicolon to join 2 independent clauses without a coordinating conjunction. And these independent clauses must be closely related. So an independent clause can stand alone as a complete sentence, but these 2 sentences are better linked together. For example, Mary has a headache. She can't go out tonight. You can see that the second independent clause is a continuation offering more information about the first independent clause. They are directly related. So we can link them together by adding a semicolon. And note that we don't capitalize the next word unless, of course, it's a proper noun. Now, if the next sentence was completely unrelated, for example, Mary has a headache. I got a C on my paper. Well, those aren't related, so we would not combine them with a semicolon. Now, a lot of people make the mistake of just adding a comma, and this is incorrect. This is called a comma splice. Mary has a headache, comma, she can't go out tonight. You can't do this. You have to use a semicolon instead of a comma. Here's another example. We missed our flight. The airline rescheduled us for tomorrow morning. Once again, we have a semicolon combining these 2 independent clauses that are closely related. There are some alternatives to using the semicolon, which I would like to show you as well. So for the first example, Mary has a headache, comma, so she can't go out tonight. Let's say you don't want to overuse semicolons. You might use a comma plus a coordinating conjunction, like so, to combine these independent clauses. And another option is to separate these into 2 different sentences. We missed our flight, period, space, and then capitalize the next word. The airline rescheduled us for tomorrow morning. Now let's go on to use 2. So rule number 2 is that we can use a semicolon with a conjunctive adverb or transitional phrase. So when you're joining 2 independent clauses with words like however, therefore, nevertheless, moreover, etc., you can use a semicolon before the conjunctive adverb and a comma after it. So let's look at an example. The movie was terrible, semicolon. However, comma, we stayed until the end. So you can see here that we use the semicolon before, however, and then we have a comma after it before introducing the independent clause. Here's another example. Dr. Jones slept in, semicolon. As a result, comma, he missed an important conference. So this is a very common use of the semicolon as well. You will see this a lot in novels and in textbooks. So use 1 and use 2 are the most common uses of the semicolon, but we still do have 2 other uses. So let's move on to use 3. So rule number 3 is that we can use a semicolon to separate items in a list when items contain commas. So as we know, we use commas in a list of 3 or more. But what happens when the items in your list contain commas already in them? Well, it can get confusing. Let's look at this example. The office has branches in Toronto, Canada, London, England, and Sydney, Australia. So you can see that we have used a semicolon after Canada and after England because we already have commas in the items in the list. One of these items is Toronto, Canada. Another item is London, England, and then Sydney, Australia. So if we only had commas in this list, it would look like we were talking about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different places. So the semicolons help separate these items in the list and make it obvious we're talking about 3 different items. Now, of course, this might be obvious. Of course, Toronto is in Canada and London is in England. So let's look at a different example. This semester, I'm taking physics, which I love, chemistry, which is challenging, and history, which is fascinating. You can see here, there are commas already in the list because I am giving my opinion on each of the subjects. Physics, which I love, chemistry, which is challenging. So by putting in the semicolons here, it's clear we're talking about 3 different subjects as well. And it just makes it easier for your eyes to read this list. Now imagine you had a sentence that said, this semester I'm taking physics, chemistry, and history. Well, in that case, you would not use semicolons, you would use commas. So before we go on to the final use of the semicolon and our quiz, if you want more help with your punctuation skills, you can order my 16 Basic Punctuation Rules ebook, which I've linked to in the description below. A few different subscribers were telling me they were having problems ordering the book, but now I have fixed it, so you should be able to order the ebook. So let's move on to use number 4. So finally, use number 4 is very rare. However, it is an option. You can use a semicolon before a coordinating conjunction for clarity. Now, once again, this is very rare. Usually, we only use a comma before coordinating conjunctions. However, if the clause is very long or there are a lot of internal commas, we may use a semicolon for clarity. So let's look at an example. Ethan worked on his essay for hours, double-checked all his citations, and proofread carefully. Yet he still forgot to submit it before the deadline. So you can see that this is an especially long sentence, and the first part before the semicolon here is an independent clause with multiple commas separating items in the list. He worked on his essay for hours, double-checked his citations, and proofread carefully. And the second part is also an independent clause after another coordinating conjunction. So because the first clause already contains internal commas, a semicolon is used before yet to avoid confusion and to clearly separate the 2 independent clauses. So by using the semicolon, we're making this sentence clearer to read and to understand. Let's look at another example. The marketing team brainstormed campaign ideas, developed a budget, and finalized the project timeline. And the design team created all the necessary graphics. So once again here, the first clause already contains commas and the coordinating conjunction and within this first list. So adding a semicolon before the second coordinating conjunction is making this clear that these sentences are separated and that the design team is not part of this list. So the marketing team did all of this and the design team created all the necessary graphics. So once again, this is quite rare. Usually we will just use commas before coordinating conjunctions. So this is an option for you if your sentence is especially long and already contains a lot of commas. So now it's time for our quiz. You have to add semicolons and commas in each of these sentences. Let's begin. Number 1. We plan to visit Paris next summer. However, we changed our minds and decided on Greece. Number 2. Our flight was delayed. We had to wait an extra hour. Number 3. The tour group visited Barcelona, Spain, Rome, Italy, and Athens, Greece. Number 4. Mia forgot her lunch. As a result, she had to buy something from the cafeteria. Number 5. The grad students worked on their presentations, revised their scripts, and practiced speaking, but they were still nervous on the big day. So let's correct these together. Number 1, we have to add a semicolon after summer. And of course, we have a space here. So we plan to visit Paris next summer, semicolon. However, comma, we changed our minds and decided on Greece. However is a conjunctive adverb, and it's connecting these two independent clauses. And remember, in Rule 2, we use a semicolon after the first independent clause and then a comma after the conjunctive adverb. So now it's correct. Number 2, we have two different independent clauses. Our flight was delayed. We had to wait an extra hour. So we need to add a semicolon right after delayed. And then, of course, one space after the semicolon, and now it's correct. Now, number 3, we have to add several commas and semicolons because we have a list, but within the list there will be commas. Barcelona, comma, Spain, Rome, comma, Italy, and Athens, comma, Greece. But now we want to separate Spain and Rome with a semicolon to make it obvious that these are 3 different items in the list. Barcelona, Spain, and then Rome, Italy, semicolon, and Athens, Greece. So now this is correct. So in number 4, we want to add a semicolon after lunch. Mia forgot her lunch, semicolon, and then a space. As a result, comma, she had to buy something from the cafeteria. As a result is a transitional phrase that is connecting these two independent clauses. So we have a comma after the transitional phrase and a semicolon after the first independent clause. Now this is correct. So now let's look at number 5. The grad students worked on their presentations, comma, revised their scripts, comma, and practiced speaking, but they were still nervous on the big day. So here, should we add a comma or a semicolon? I'm going to use this semicolon because the two clauses are long and they contain these internal commas, and this semicolon is just going to make it look clearer, okay? Again, this is rare, but it is a possibility to make things clearer. So now this is correct. Okay. So let me know in the comment section how many you got correct out of 5. Make sure to check out my other lessons, and I have many different quizzes and punctuation practices as well. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you all in my next lesson.